All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. AI and how it could really shake things up for older adults.
Yeah, it's a really hot area. And this new research paper we're looking at today is right on the cutting edge. It's exploring how these AI-powered virtual assistants, like the ones we're all getting used to, could be a game changer for seniors, especially when it comes to navigating tough topics like Medicare, long-term care insurance, and finding community resources, all that stuff.
It's like AI for Seniors 101,
Right.
but way more exciting than that sounds.
Totally.
They actually put four of the big players head to head.
Right.
Alexa, Google Assistant, Bard, and ChatGPT-4.
The big names.
Think of it as a digital showdown to see who can really step up and be the ultimate companion for seniors.
I like that. A digital showdown. That's a great way to put it.
So before we get into the AI battle royale, let's
Ah,
talk about why this is even important.
sure.
The researchers behind this paper really emphasize the point that aging comes with a whole new set of challenges.
It does.
Health concerns, changes in mobility, even cognitive shifts, all these things can make it tougher for older adults to find the information they need and make those big decisions that come up later in life.
That's absolutely right. These decisions, they can be pretty overwhelming for anyone. But when you factor in some of the challenges that come with aging, it becomes even more important to have access to reliable and easy to understand information.
And the researchers highlight a really crucial point about traditional internet searches. They can be a pain for anyone, let's be honest, but for seniors, they can be especially challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Multiple tabs, dense websites, it's just mentally exhausting.
It is. It can be. Yeah.
So the big question is, can AI step in and simplify all of this? Give seniors direct conversational answers that actually make sense.
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the paper delves into some important aspects of that. It looks at the accuracy of these AI assistants when it comes to senior-specific questions. Can they be trusted to provide the right information? And it also looks at the amount of information they provide, because sometimes too much information can be just as bad as too little, especially if you're already feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Right, right. So it's about finding that sweet spot between being informative and not overloading the user.
Exactly, exactly. It's a delicate balance.
And we all know that AI, even the most advanced systems, can make mistakes. It's not perfect. It's a work in progress. So I'm curious, what did the researchers find? Were these AIs up to the challenge? Did they deliver?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The researchers discovered that the AI assistants using a large language model, or LLM for short, performed way better than their counterparts. We're talking about Bard and ChatGPT-4 here. They were consistently more accurate, especially when the questions got a bit more complicated.
So for those of us who aren't super tech savvy, can you break down what an LLM actually is? What makes them so special?
Sure. Think of LLMs as, well, imagine a brain that's read millions of books and articles.
Okay. Yeah.
They can understand your questions in a way that's really similar to how humans do it. They can process language and give you responses that feel very natural and conversational. That's why Bard and ChatGPT-4 were able to tackle those more nuanced questions and give answers that were spot on.
So it's not just about spitting out facts. It's about understanding the question and giving a response that's actually relevant and helpful.
Exactly. It's about comprehension, not just regurgitation.
Got it. So we've got these LLMs, Bard and ChatGPT-4. They're proving to be quite impressive. But there's a flip side to all this brain power, right? You mentioned earlier that they can be a bit chatty.
Yeah, that's right. They can be. They tend to give you all the details, which is great if you want to deep dive into a topic. But for an older adult who might be dealing with cognitive challenges, processing all that extra information could be really tough. It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
It can be. It can be. So we've got accuracy on one side and potential information overload on the other. It seems like finding that balance, that's the key here. Did the researchers offer any solutions, any ways to address this?
They did. They suggested that seniors could actually be trained to, well, you could say coach their AI. Give it cues to control how much information it provides. So imagine saying something like, hey, Bard, just give me the basics on this. Or Chat GPT-4, can you give me a little more detail on that specific point?
Oh, that's pretty neat. It's like having a personalized AI tutor that adapts to how you learn. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. The researchers focused on three key areas: Medicare, long-term care insurance, and finding community resources. Let's start with community resources. What kind of questions did they throw at these AI assistants?
Well, they started with the basics, like what are some community resources for seniors? Just to get a sense of what the AIs could come up with. But then they made things more challenging. They added specific needs and constraints, like, for example, are there any free transportation services for seniors in my zip code that are specifically designed for people with visual impairments?
Oh, wow, that's a mouthful. I can imagine not all the AIs were up to that challenge.
Right, right. It was a real test.
So who came out on top in this round?
Well, no big surprise here. It was those LLMs again. Bard and ChatGPT-4 consistently gave the most accurate answers, especially as the questions got more and more intricate. They really showed their ability to handle those complex requests.
Okay, so those LLMs are really proving their worth. But I'm also curious about the types of errors the AIs made. Were there any common slip-ups that we should be aware of?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, Alexa and Google Assistant, they often struggled with those longer, more complex questions, especially when they were given through voice commands. It's like they got a little lost in translation somewhere along the way.
Ah, so it's not just about what you ask, it's also about how you ask it.
That's a great point, yeah. And there were times when they just offered links to websites or images instead of giving a direct answer, which, kind of defeats the purpose of having an AI assistant in the first place. It's like, hey, I can just do a Google search myself.
Exactly. You're back to square one.
Yeah, back to square one.
So what about Bard and ChatGPT-4, our star LLMs? Did they make any blunders?
Well, they did stumble occasionally, especially when it came to really specific information, like the exact name of an organization or the address. They could explain the concept of a resource, but maybe not point you to the one that's right around the corner.
So it sounds like there's still room for improvement, even with the most advanced AI,
Yeah,
which makes sense.
absolutely.
It's still evolving.
It's still evolving, yeah.
Knowing what we do now about their strengths and weaknesses, let's shift gears and talk about how these AIs performed when faced with, well, let's face it, the complexities of Medicare and long-term care insurance.
Okay, let's do it. Medicare. Oh, Medicare. It's a topic that can make anyone's head spin.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like this giant puzzle of policies and procedures, and even if you think you've got a handle on it, there's always some new twist or turn.
Right. And it's one of those things you just kind of hope you'll magically figure out when you reach a certain age. But the reality is it's way more complicated than that.
Way more complicated.
That's exactly why the researchers zeroed in on Medicare for this study. They wanted to see how these AI assistants would handle those really factual questions about Medicare. Putting aside all the extra information and all that, could they get the core details right?
So, no room for fluff this time. Just straight facts. This is getting good. How did they measure up? How did the AIs do when it came to Medicare?
Well, the results were pretty clear-cut. Once again, Bard and ChatGPT-4, or LLMs, they just blew the competition out of the water. They showed a much higher level of accuracy compared to Alexa and Google Assistant.
Those LLMs, they're like the straight-A students of the AI world, always exceeding expectations.
It's true. But it's not just about knowing the facts, it's about understanding them, applying them. What really impressed the researchers was how those LLMs could grasp the nuances of those Medicare policies and then apply that knowledge to specific scenarios.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Let's say you ask, does Medicare Part B cover annual eye exams? Sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah, seems like it.
But the answer actually depends on a bunch of things, like what's the reason for the eye exam? Are there any pre-existing conditions? It's not a simple yes or no.
Medicare. Always with the fine print.
Exactly. And what set Bard and ChatGPT-4 apart was their ability to consider all those little details, those nuances, and give answers that reflected how Medicare coverage really works in the real world.
While Alexa and Google Assistant, they might have stumbled a bit, maybe given a more general answer that missed those crucial details.
Yeah, that's possible. And when we're talking about healthcare coverage, getting those details right is super important. It can have a real impact on someone's health and well-being.
It makes you wonder if, in the future, these AI assistants could actually play a bigger role in helping people navigate Medicare. It'd be like having a Medicare expert right there in your pocket.
Wouldn't that be something? To just ask your AI assistant a question about your coverage and get a clear, accurate answer you could actually trust, it could really empower people to take control of their healthcare.
It would. It really would.
Yeah.
But of course, we have to acknowledge that AI is still, it's a work in progress. It's evolving.
Right.
As we saw with the community resources, even the most advanced systems can still make mistakes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're not saying AI is perfect, not by a long shot. There's always room for improvement, especially when it comes to giving specific details and avoiding that information overload we talked about earlier. Finding that balance between being helpful and being clear, that's still something researchers are working on.
It's an ongoing process for sure.
Definitely.
So we've explored the world of community resources. We've delved into the Medicare maze. Now, let's brace ourselves and enter the final frontier, long-term care insurance.
Long-term care insurance, yeah. It's a topic that can be a bit, well, it can be a bit scary for people, especially for older adults who are facing those tough decisions about their future care.
It's a big decision,
Yeah.
and it has huge financial implications. And let's be honest, it's not always a comfortable conversation to have, even with family.
That's so true. And that's one of the reasons why the researchers decided to include long-term care insurance in their study. They wanted to see if AI assistants could create a safe space for people to explore these topics, get information without feeling pressured or judged.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they were also really interested in how the AI assistants would balance that accuracy with the amount of information they provided.
So back to that fine line between being helpful and not overwhelming the user.
Exactly. And the findings here were really interesting. They really highlighted both the strengths and the limitations of AI when it comes to supporting people in making those complex financial decisions.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What did they find out about AI and long-term care insurance?
Well, when it came to accuracy, no surprises here. Bard and ChatGPT-4 came out on top again. They gave much more reliable answers about long-term care insurance policies, coverage, and costs.
Those LLMs, they're on a roll.
Yeah.
It seems like their ability to process all that complex information is really giving them an edge.
I think you're right. But here's where things get interesting. Remember how we talked about LLMs being a little chatty?
Ugh.
Well, that came up again in this section. While they were generally accurate, they did sometimes give a bit too much information, like an avalanche of details. And that could lead to confusion, especially when you're dealing with those intricate financial concepts.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, imagine trying to understand the tax implications of long-term care insurance. It's already a complex topic, and if you get bombarded with a ton of information, it could make it even harder to grasp the key points.
You got it. That's exactly what the researchers observed. While Bard and ChatGPT-4 could explain those general tax implications, they sometimes struggled to tailor their responses to specific situations. It's like they were trying to cover all the bases but ended up making things more confusing.
They're trying to be too helpful.
Too helpful, yeah. And I think this really highlights the importance of personalization in AI development. If an AI assistant can understand your individual needs and preferences, it can give you information that's both accurate and relevant to your situation.
It's like having an AI assistant that gets you, that speaks your language. And I can see how that would be so beneficial for older adults, especially those who might be feeling overwhelmed by all the tech stuff.
Absolutely. And that's where that user training comes in. If people can learn to effectively, like we said before, coach their AI assistants, they can guide them towards providing just the information they need without getting lost in a sea of details.
So it's about giving people the tools and the knowledge to really take control of their AI experience.
You act a partnership, not just a one-way street.
It's a partnership. I like that. So as we wrap up this segment on long-term care insurance, I think the big takeaway here is this. AI has enormous potential to help people navigate these tricky issues.
Oh, yeah.
But it's about finding that sweet spot, providing enough information without sacrificing clarity and relevance.
It's a delicate balance. And I think it's important to remember that AI, while it's a powerful tool, it's still under development.
It's not a magic bullet.
No. And we need to keep working on these systems, keep refining them, and empowering users to interact with them in a way that maximizes those benefits while minimizing the risks.
After going through all of this, community resources, Medicare, and long-term care insurance, it really feels like we're on the verge of something amazing. The potential for AI to help older adults it's huge, but it's also a little, I don't know, a little intimidating to think about all the challenges that come with it.
Yeah, I get that. I think the important thing to keep in mind is that we're still really early in this whole process. It's like, remember the early days of the internet?
Oh, yeah.
So much potential, but it took a while to figure out how to use it right, how to make it work for everyone.
That's a good point. We forget sometimes how much the internet has changed things. It wasn't an overnight success. And AI, well, it's going to be the same. It's a journey.
It is. It's definitely a journey. And research like this study, it's so important. It helps us figure out where AI shines and where it needs a little more work.
It gives us a roadmap.
Exactly, a roadmap.
Yeah. So looking ahead, what are some of the big takeaways? What have we learned from this research? What should we be focusing on to make sure AI is a truly valuable tool for older adults?
Well, I think one of the clearest findings is how crucial accuracy and reliability are. Like we saw, not all AI assistants are created equal. Bard and ChatGPT-4, those LLMs, they consistently delivered more accurate answers, especially when things got complicated. That tells us a lot about where AI development needs to go.
It makes sense.
Mhm.
If we're going to rely on AI to help older adults make important decisions about healthcare and finances, accuracy has to be the top priority.
Absolutely. And then along with accuracy, there's accessibility. Information's only useful if people can understand it, right?
Right.
So we need to move away from this one-size-fits-all approach and really embrace personalization. We need AI systems that can adapt, to an individual's cognitive abilities, how they learn, how they prefer to communicate.
It's like having an AI assistant that speaks your language. That gets you. And I can imagine that would be so empowering for older adults, especially those who might feel a little overwhelmed by all the tech stuff.
Totally. And to get to that level of personalization, we need to bring older adults into the process, get their feedback, their insights, their experiences, make sure these systems are truly meeting their needs, not just what we think their needs are.
It's a good point. We can't just assume we know what's best for them.
Yeah.
We need to ask them.
Exactly. And let's not forget about training and support. We can't just throw new technology at people and expect them to figure it out on their own.
Right, right.
We need to provide resources that are clear and easy to understand. And we need support systems in place to help older adults build confidence and embrace these tools.
Technology should be empowering, not intimidating.
Exactly. It's about creating a partnership between humans and AI where each one complements the other's strengths.
And as we move forward, as we explore all these possibilities, there's one more thing we can't ignore: ethics. How do we make sure AI is used responsibly and ethically when it comes to supporting older adults?
That's a big one. We have to be really careful about things like data privacy, bias, and the potential for misuse. It's about finding that balance between innovation and protection, making sure that AI is used to make life better for older adults, not to take advantage of them.
It's a tightrope walk for sure.
It is. We're excited about the possibilities, but we also have to be cautious. The decisions we make now, they're going to have a ripple effect for years to come.
It's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's on all of us, right?
It is. Researchers, developers, policymakers, older adults themselves, we all need to be part of the conversation, work together, and be willing to adapt as things change.
It's a team effort. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of AI and what it means for older adults, it feels like we're at crossroads.
Mm.
There's a path ahead that's full of potential, but it's a path we have to navigate carefully, thoughtfully, and ethically.
And it's a journey we're all on together. And even though we might not know exactly where it's going to lead, one thing is for sure. AI has the power to change the lives of older adults in profound ways.
It does. It really does. And it's up to us to make sure that change is positive, it's fair, and it gives them the power to live their best lives. That's a future worth fighting for.
Couldn't agree more.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.